16. With audience participation, it's about pitching to the audience and really understanding them, I think. I don't know, Henry, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, I forgot about like a tweet-along thing. We do a heckle vision where you text stuff and it shows up on screen along with the movie. That ended up with a lot of people anonymously making a lot of evil and racist comments.
Yeah.
So I don't do that show so much anymore. Other than that, like having people use props and quote along and whatnot. For us, we're really well known for kicking people out of the theater just for talking or texting during a regular screening, and then we have server staff inside all the time. So we will explain before even a quote along that this is a quote along, it's not a quote right before, it's not a repeat your favorite line afterward. And even though we're here, we're having fun, it's a party screening, if there's somebody that's, our normal rule is if there's somebody there that's bothering you, write a note down and your waiter will come by and pick that up, and then a manager gives them a warning and then kicks them out. And I think that even if we didn't have that server staff, you could still have somebody just standing at the front of the theater and making sure there's going to be like somebody will yell out one joke and get a laugh and then maybe be encouraged and try to do it again. But like I'll always let the one or two things slide, and then if it's becoming a pattern and you're really ruining the experience, go up to them and be like, you are out, just as long as you set that expectation ahead of time.
I think it's really interesting how timing and audience makes such a difference to the experience. I did this one show at the IMAX in London, and I did a matinee and then an evening performance. And the matinee one, everyone kind of sat and very respectively kind of stayed quiet and ate popcorn. And then the evening one, everyone got out of their chairs and danced. So even though it's the same show, the reaction's so different just from the timing.
And the alcohol.
Yes.
Hey, what's your thoughts on food as a component to the creativity?
I love food.
Yeah, Henry's the expert on food.
Yeah, I mean, we're a full-service restaurant all the time, so there's always food tie-ins, but we do a lot of special dinner parties or feasts where everything from you'll get the same food that they're eating on screen while they're eating it, or it's just great Italian food paired with The Godfather. I recommend it, it's good, and it's also fun to do it and flip that where we bring the pop-up cinema into a restaurant space, and then you've got a whole other way of playing with that.
On my Steve, do you want to go?
I was just going to say that we don't serve food inside our cinema, but we do lots of kind of tie-ins with our kitchen team in our restaurant, and also trying to experiment a bit more with just general concessions. So we did a screening of The Stuff recently, and we just had loads of marshmallow fluff on sale. So it was just kind of like quick, easy things that aren't too messy, because I have spent too many years of my life sweeping up cinema screens.
So you don't have confetti cannons in your theaters?
God, no.
There is a company that I should plug who specifically do eat-along screenings. They produce them across the UK. They're called Edible Cinema, and they've just joined the Live Cinema Network. So expect more eat-alongs across the UK. Face.
So I really like this trend. I hope it continues. I've been to the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. Does this a lot. They have the organ playing, and I believe that's a Disney venue, if I'm not mistaken. And those are cast members, which is under Actors Equity Association's contract. So, like, I think the most fascinating thing was when you guys were talking about the legal aspect. I hope that doesn't get in the way of this trend proceeding. I'm just curious, where do you find your talent, your cast members, and are you working with any equity unions or anything as things get more complicated for fair compensation and safety if it's a really complicated production?
The safety, I'm not sure how it works in the US, but there's a ton of hoops you have to jump through in the UK about if you have employed actors, especially if they're then interacting with members of the public about kind of public liability, but also all kinds of regulations you've got to have on the space that you're using. But I would say, Lisa, you recruit actors through all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, Live Cinema UK never produces an event on its own. We always have a theatrical partner. Sneaky Experience are one of the most regular ones we work with. I won't work with a company that do not pay equity rates, who are the Actors Trade Union in the UK, and we recruit through the Arts Council website. So we go back to a publicly funded place to recruit recruit people, and things like Spotlight as well. But yeah, I work with theatre companies that I think are interesting, and yeah,
I think it would be really cool if more film, like the actual film, went on tour with some of the cast to do stuff. And there's a film in South by called I Am Belfast, which is Mark Cousins' new film about Belfast, obviously. And Mark is going on tour and doing live narration because he's a documentary maker who narrates through his films. And I think that's quite an interesting flip on actually it's his film, he's the personality of the film, and he's kind of voicing this character, and I think that's quite an interesting dynamic. And maybe there's more work that, especially in the documentary world, maybe that's a kind of really interesting way of bringing documentaries into the live cinema picture.
Yeah, theatrical live cinema at the moment just does not tour, and I'm looking at ways to try and change that, because it's not fair that there's loads of live cinema in London and then there's very few providers around the country, especially for theatrical things. So I'm working on ways to get it to more places.
Hi, I come from more of the advertising side, that's my background, but I absolutely love everything you guys are doing, and I've had an idea that I've been trying to pursue that falls into sort of this territory, and I have, from my advertising experience, a production team I can work with, and I eventually, like once I get down to a point, I can tap into sponsors that I know and things like that, but the legal issue has always been like trying to figure out where to even start that, and you guys are at a place now where it seems like you have your system sort of in place, and now you go, and like Henry, you're talking about the distributors and how they sort of turn the other way, but somebody that's just getting started in this space, just go the loophole path and try and do that, or like I don't even know who to call at a distributor or a studio, or if I want to do something with a soundtrack, who I need to call, or...
I would say we could never tell you to go through the loophole route.
And I mean, it's much riskier when you're starting out like that, because if you get that cease and desist and you've spent 6 months trying to produce an event and then you advertise it, and there's a lot of folks getting shut down for a couple of things right now because they didn't follow all the right advertising rules. If it's just trying to book a film, every studio has their booking department, and just you'll find somebody there in repertory booking if it's a classic. If it's other soundtrack stuff, I'm not sure, but I know that our guys at Mondo, that we also release vinyl soundtracks to things, and they just do something similar with the record label part of it. But for the most part, when you're trying to figure out how to book something, the people on the other side of the phone want you to book it because that helps them make money. So it's not that difficult of a process. It's just figuring out if it's Paul at Universal and who it is at everywhere else.
It also might be worth, if you operate outside of the kind of exhibition world, actually hooking up with whatever venue you want to work with, because they might have connections existing, so they might actually be able to introduce you and get you past the initial shutdown.
Thank you.
Yeah, if it's cool, I'll do it with you.
Hi, I just want to say I absolutely love the Cast and social events. I've been doing this for years. My question is, I think one of you mentioned something you want to do with dance in the future. If you could touch on that, or any other cross pollination of art and cinema that you would like to do that you haven't seen or been able to do yet.
Yeah, well, the two things I really want to do this year is dance, and I want to do brass bands. I come from Yorkshire, which is a huge brass band world. I don't know if anybody's seen Brassed Off. That's basically it. And I love brass music, and I think that it's totally not been used for film yet in the UK, and I think there's a really nice sound, and I can imagine in the acoustics of a cinema it would be pretty incredible. So that's my next little project to work on. But also dance, we work in the same building that we work in. We have Forced Ends Dance Company, who are very well known in the UK for kind of interesting modern dance. And I think any venues that's got kind of staging, which is most of our venues nowadays, could really look at how you incorporate dance during projection and what that is. And I don't really know yet. I need to work with choreographers and see what people want to work with, and maybe it's archive film and maybe it's shorts or something like that. But it might actually be commissioned film work alongside commissioned dance production, and that could technically tour quite easily because it would just be limited members of a dance company, because you couldn't have like a whole ballet or something like that. So I really feel like there's a lot more that people can explore with like various other art forms, and I think trying to be as imaginative as we can be is probably the best way to go.
I want interactive and digital producers to make stuff that we can use in live cinema, please. I went to a panel called Multi-Optional Movie the other day, which was brilliant, and I am worried that the future of cinema is heading towards sitting there with a headset on. I want to see how we can use digital and interactive tech inside the cinema space, so yeah, please send me ideas for that, and I want to get them developed.
It's probably more of a UK question, just not BFI. Do they apply any regulation in terms of you changing the meaning of a film, for example, when you're showing it through your interaction, or what you're trying to kind of expose in terms of meaning?
Do you mean the films that they own?
Yeah, the films that they may allow you to kind of show or utilise, within a kind of immersive.
They're very understanding actually. If we are wanting to work with anything that's coming from the BFI, they pretty much let us do what we will with it.
It's the quality control that they're worried about.
Yeah.
It's, you need to have, I've got a good band, I've got a good producer for it, I've got these venues signed up, and those sort of three things.
But it's not a very big country, so there's only so many people working in it, and as long as they trust the people that are on board to not ruin the artwork, then they're very open to it, because essentially they're the government body responsible for making sure that film culture exists in our country, so they really want more people to watch different types of film. So they're very understanding, and the event I was talking about earlier with the new chamber music to existing archive film, they waived all the rights for that because they could see that the work that was being produced was really important and celebrated a really interesting event in the city. So they're very kind of open to all sorts of different ideas, and they do loads of great stuff in their own venue in London. So they're, maybe I'd like it more if they would tour the stuff that they do in London, because they put loads of time and effort and money into it, and it just plays a couple of times. Anyone got any other questions? No? Well, thank you so much for having us all, and once again, do come tonight to the Alamo at 10 o'clock. Be there early because it's going to be busy. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
I don't swing to fear, so yeah, I'm all alone in my base.